Hi everyone, I'm Shubham. I'm a master teacher at Vedantu. We are discussing JEE Advanced 2020 Paper 2 Mathematics, and the question for this video is this. Let A and B be positive real numbers such that A is greater than 1 and B is less than A. Let P be a point in the first quadrant that lies on the hyperbola x square by A square minus y square by B square equal to 1. Suppose the tangent to the hyperbola at P passes through the point 1, 0, and suppose the normal to the hyperbola at P cuts off equal intercepts on the coordinate axis. Let delta denote the area of the triangle formed by the tangent at P, the normal at P, and the x-axis. If E denotes the eccentricity of the hyperbola, then which of the following statements is or are true? So there are four options. It is a multiple correct type question, and this year there was partial marking too. The first two options are related to eccentricity E of hyperbola, and the other two options are related to the area of the triangle formed by the tangent at point P, the normal at point P, and the x-axis. Now you would pounce on this question of eccentricity. The first option says E is greater than 1 less than root 2. The second option says E is greater than root 2 less than 2. So since B is less than A, and you would clearly see that A is the length of semi-transverse axis and B is the length of semi-conjugate axis. So you can say eccentricity is equal to under root 1 plus B square by A square. Now since B is less than A, B square will be less than A square. Here we are taking B and A to be lengths of semi-conjugate axis and semi-transverse axis respectively. And if B square is less than A square, you can say B square by A square would be less than 1. That essentially means 1 plus B square by A square would be less than 2. So that essentially means eccentricity will be less than root 2. And since it is eccentricity of a hyperbola, it is obviously greater than 1. So that essentially means A is correct, and that also means B is not correct. Now let's talk about C and D options. Note that here delta is in terms of A and B. C option is delta is A to the power 4. D option is delta is B to the power 4. Now what all do we know? We know that the tangent passes through the point 1, 0. We also know that the normal has equal intercepts on the coordinate axis. So this essentially means the normal will have slope -1. That also means the tangent would have slope 1 because normal and tangent are perpendicular to each other. So effectively I have got the equation of the tangent because it has slope 1 and it passes through the point 1, 0. So it becomes, equation of tangent becomes y minus 0 is equal to 1 times x minus 1. So this essentially means x minus y equal to 1. Now to comment upon the area, you may say P, let this be A and Q. If I can get P and Q's coordinates, it will be very easy to comment upon the area of triangle PAQ. Now to talk about P, let's say P is x1, y1. Obviously it lies on the hyperbola, so we may say x1 square by A square minus y1 square by B square equal to 1. But this may not be that much useful as we move ahead. Here we know the equation of the tangent at point P. So by comparing the equation of tangent that we derive using t equal to 0, that is x1 by A square minus y1 by B square equal to 1. By comparing this with x minus y equal to 1, we can clearly say that x1 is equal to A square and y1 is equal to B square, because these two equations are supposed to be identical because they are supposed to be the same line. So that means the point P becomes A square comma B square. Now let's try to find point Q. What is PQ? PQ is basically normal at point P. I know its slope, I know the point P. So I can even get the equation of the normal, which becomes y minus b square is equal to minus 1 times x minus a square. So this essentially becomes x plus y is equal to a square plus b square. And to get the point Q, which lies on x-axis, you need to put y to be 0. So that means point Q would become a square plus b square comma 0. Now what about the area of triangle PAQ? Rather than using all the three coordinates, you may just use this basic understanding that area of the triangle is half into base, which is AQ, and height, which you can say to be the y coordinate of point P. Why? Because P lies in the first quadrant. So delta is supposed to be half into base, which is AQ, which will be difference of the x coordinates of A and Q in absolute sense. So it will become a square plus b square minus 1 multiplied by the y coordinate of point P, which essentially is b square. Now note that point P, which is a square comma b square, lies on the hyperbola. So that means it will satisfy this equation, and by putting x1 to be a square and y1 to be b square, you would get a square minus b square to be 1. Even if say you don't consider this equation, you may consider this equation of the tangent on which to the point P lies, and hence we have a square minus b square is equal to 1. So this area essentially becomes half times a square minus 1 would become b square, and already there is one b square, so it becomes 2b square times b square. So essentially the area delta becomes b to the power 4. So that means D is also correct, and hence C is not correct. So A and D are the answers. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the next question.